Hi, everybody, and welcome to our workshop this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking about the concepts covered in the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. So we're calling our presentation Givers and Takers, types of workers in the workplace. So as I said, Adam Grant is the author of a book called Give and Take. And it's a book that I actually bought a few years ago, and kind of it sat on my Kindle for a while, and I just got around to reviewing it, and it's very good. Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist. He is a professor at the Wharton School, and he studies work motivation and success, and he does have several books other than Give and Take, so he has quite a few books. We're going to talk about the concept of the three types of workers that Adam Grant puts forth. So what are the three types of workers? They are givers, they are takers, and they are matchers. And I'm going to show a short clip on, basically it's a little summary of his book, so that rather than have me explain it, someone put the summary to some nice little illustration. So it's very interesting. So hold on while I get that going.
I recently read the book Give and Take by author Adam Grant. When you're working on a team and a teammate asks you for a favor, what do you think to yourself? Do you think, what's in it for me? Or, if I help them, will they repay the favor? Or, I'd be happy to help and I don't expect anything in return. In each personal or professional interaction, we can choose to be either a taker, a matcher, or a giver. We might be a giver at home with our kids, but we might be a matcher at work. However, when we meet someone new, we all have a particular preference for how we interact with that person. We might be overly cautious and choose to be a matcher. We may always look out for our best interest and choose to be a taker. Or we might default to being a giver, giving with an open heart with no strings attached. Author Adam Grant is a business professor at Wharton, and he wanted to know which default reciprocating style would most likely lead to long-term career success. To find the answer, he looked over scientific research that analyzed the performances of givers, matchers, and takers. He found a study of 160 engineers in California, another study involving 600 medical students in Belgium. He even conducted his own study of salespeople in North Carolina to see who had the highest performance: givers, matchers, or takers. In these three studies, and in many more studies, he found that a particular group of people always finished on top. These people were commonly referred to as being givers, giving with no strings attached and without keeping score. Medical students who gave the most had 11% higher grades. Salespeople who were referred to as givers generated 50% more sales revenue for the company. And the engineers who gave the most had the best performance reviews. So if givers are at the top of the success ladder, then who's at the bottom? Givers. Adam found that separate groups of givers performed very poorly and were highly unsuccessful. In the study of engineers, a group of givers had the worst performance reviews. They had the most unfinished tasks, errors made, and deadlines missed. Those who gave with no strings attached either led the pack or were lagging far behind. So what makes the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful giver? And how can you have the confidence to give freely without having to worry about your own success? It turns out that successful givers ask three core questions before freely offering their time. They ask why, when, and for whom. In one study, people documented their giving every day for 2 weeks. They noted what they gave and why they gave it. On some days, people gave because they thought it was important and they cared about the person they were giving to. On other days, they gave out of duty or obligation. At the end of each day, they reported how energized they felt. On the days that people helped others out of a sense of enjoyment and purpose, they experienced significant gains in energy. And when they gave out of obligation or duty, they had a reduction in energy. So why you give matters. Just giving for the sake of giving and doing it out of obligation will zap your energy and lead to givers' burnout. Always have a strong why before you give freely. The second question that successful givers ask is when. In the book, Adam details the story of 17 engineers who were tasked with creating a laser printer under impossible time constraints. The engineers on the project reported that they could hardly get anything done between 9 and 5 because they were always giving away their time to focus on other people's problems. So as an experiment, the engineers instituted a no giving time, 3 days a week from morning until noon. Outside of that time, engineers would freely give away their time to help others. But during that time, they would focus on their most important tasks. As a result, 2/3 of the team increased their productivity, and they were able to get the laser printer out on time, making it just the second time in the division's history that they released a product on time. When we freely give to others without blocking out time to focus on our most important tasks, we kill our productivity. We spend too much time advancing other people's agendas and not enough time advancing our own. It's important to strike an equilibrium between giving freely and giving to ourselves. Otherwise, we miss deadlines and we stay at the bottom of the success ladder. A great giving strategy is to batch your giving. A psychologist at the University of California found that people who performed 5 random acts of kindness at random times throughout the week were significantly less happy than those that completed all 5 random acts of kindness at one time. Doing a bunch of nice things for people in a row makes the giving seem more significant to yourself. This increases your energy, your productivity, and your ability to help the team succeed. Therefore, block out time to give to yourself and batch your giving for certain times of the day. Knowing when to give will ensure that you meet your deadlines and avoid falling to the bottom of the success ladder. Peter Adet, an Australian financial advisor, had a business partner named Rich. Rich was highly agreeable and he appeared to be a giver, but over time, Rich revealed his true colors. Rich drew a hefty $300,000 salary from the company, and he showed up for work at 10 a.m. and went to the pub each afternoon. That left Peter to do all the work in their firm. Rich was taking advantage of Peter and many other people at the company. He was destroying the company's morale, and if Peter didn't do anything about it, he might lose his company. So Peter got crafty, and he decided to appeal to Rich's interests and offer him an opportunity to work on a special project in the entrepreneurial space with the condition that he would report his progress every 90 days. After a few months, Peter was able to show the board that Rich wasn't making any progress, thus making it easy for the board to let him go. Like Peter, we must notice takers. Give them a chance to prove themselves as matchers or givers, but be willing to part ways if they don't prove themselves. A successful giver gives to benefit the greater good, but because takers only care about themselves, they don't pay the favor forward and they don't benefit the greater good. They only benefit themselves. Here are 3 signs of a potential taker. First, they use the pronouns I and me more than us or we when talking about a group success. Second, they have extremely vain profile photos on social media. If their profile picture makes them look significantly better than they look in person, then they might be a taker. And third, they treat people above and below them distinctly differently. They kiss up and they kick down. They act caring and warm around powerful people that can help them, but they act cold and short with less powerful people they can't benefit from. Those are the 3 signs of a taker, but notice that I didn't mention being friendly or unfriendly. This is because many takers are good fakers, and they put on a nice impression until they get what they want. And many givers can be grumpy, but still have a tendency to give without any strings attached. So give freely, give people a chance, but if they prove to be a taker, have the courage to say no and shut them out of your life. In the end, giving without keeping score is the most successful reciprocating style you can adopt. However, being a giver can backfire if it leads to burnout or if it lets others take advantage of you. So always ask why, when, and for whom before freely offering your. I recently read.
Okay. So that was a quick little, I know he flew through that really fast, but any impressions from that before we go on?
That was so informative, and it's something that I've learned over the years, and I know that I'm definitely a giver, especially hopefully I hope my coworkers see that, because you guys know I would do just about anything for you, and I do it straight from my heart. I don't want nothing in return or anything like that, and I always try to keep to myself, like you said, because I know I've told y'all several times that a lot of people take advantage of me because I am a giver, and I've learned to look out for those signs and actually, take them out of my address book, because I don't want to have it. They bring me down and then they make me unhappy,
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely are a giver from working with you. I can say that. And absolutely, we're lucky when we have people that we work with that are givers. And I think it makes us, it makes it for a better team. Let's talk a little bit about the traits of givers. This is a review of the video. So basically, givers are people that give more than they take, and they don't expect anything in return. They're not doing it because they expect you to do them a favor later on. They just either really enjoy it or it's just the kind of person that they are. Givers are at both ends of the performance scale. They usually are the very highest performers or they are the very lowest performers. And that's based on a couple of different factors. So the lowest performers are people who never ask for help. There's one of the TED Talks that Adam Grant gives talks about a nursing floor where the nurses were, even though they were very giving people, everybody was so busy on the floor that they never asked for help. So people were always kind of running around frantically, like with chickens without heads, because they didn't want to take away from other people's work. And as a result, they weren't as productive. They weren't as successful on the floor as they wanted to be. So one of the nurse managers came up with the idea of having one kind of floater nurse whose only job was to help other people when they ran into trouble. And they assigned this person whose only job was to help out other people. And as a result, people started asking for help to get things done when they needed it. And they became much more productive because they felt empowered and that it was okay for them to ask for help. So high performers will ask for help, but lower givers will not usually ask for help. Also, they say yes indiscriminately. They, even when it's detrimental to themselves, even as we saw in the little illustration, when the timing is wrong, they're in the middle of a big project. So it's not that there has to be a distinction between saying yes and because you just want to do it and you're a good person, but also knowing that you have to manage your time and say yes when it's not going to hurt you with your work. High performers do a couple of different things. As I said, they know it's okay to ask for help, and they also assist others in little ways. And we saw kind of a little example of that with the 5-minute favors. He called it random acts of kindness. But they use these 5-minute favors to help people, and they're still able to meet their own goals. So what are 5-minute favors? 5-minute favors are high impact, low cost, little good deeds that they do for people without any expectation of return. And they're used, to help other people out. Can you think of some 5-minute that might come to mind? What would be an example of a 5-minute favor? Does anybody have an example? Robin?
Well, when Debbie started with us several weeks back, and she, I don't know that she necessarily even asked for help, but I know Danielle and I offered to help with moving some furniture around to make the workspace just better for her and other teachers. And it probably took 5 or 10 minutes at time, but I really think it made a huge difference in her feeling supported by other members of the organization. Even though we're not a direct part of her team, she felt that camaraderie and that support, I think.
Yeah, that's a great example. Anybody else?
I've learned over time that especially if I don't know something, I spend a lot of time trying to find out the information when it has actually been helping me more productively to ask the people that know already. And it saves me a lot of time. I can get back to my work, and I have these 2 people that that work with me, and they are like brainiacs. They're fantastic, and they always are there to give me 5 minutes of their time, all the time, anytime, all the time. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, there's definitely times, you can do something very small. So for example, as small as making an introduction, right? I have a relative who's very well connected, and she's the kind of person, if you're telling her, you know, what your kid wants to do with their life or what you want to do, she'll say, oh, I know somebody. Let me get them in touch with you. And she'll just shoot them an email and say, you know, Joe, meet Maria. She's my cousin. I want you, you know, she's interested in this. I wonder if you could have a conversation with her. Like something as simple as that. Or maybe not even that fancy. Maybe it's just you bring somebody a cup of coffee, right? That's a 5-minute favor. Or you give them an email address or a phone number that they need, or you know that their kid is interested in playing baseball and you have maybe a piece of equipment that your child isn't using anymore and you bring it to them, something like that. So these little favors where you're not asking for anything in return, because those are the kind of things that will foster a better work environment. People get along better, and then it's just a nicer place to work. Lisa, you probably have an example, right? I'm sure you have an example of a 5-minute favor.
No, but I was thinking like when you proofread something for someone, or like someone trying to send something out, or they're writing something, and you know, you can just be there in support of that and help with wording or whatever. That's a nice quick one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think the people who work as a volunteer too, they work they just work just to help, or something like that, without any reward.
Right, you're not getting anything in return. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. People who do, you know, things for other people, just even if it's a quick, you know, you drop off, you got the free ham and you're not going to use it. That's something that you're doing that's a nice thing to do for other people, and it's not going to pay you back, at least not right away, in terms of your benefit, but it pays you back in the how you feel about yourself, which can make you a better worker, a better parent, a better spouse, a better person in the long run.
So, Miss Maria, let me just add, would you say that is like more one hand washes the other?
Well,
not necessarily, or
well, it's interesting. Well, we're actually going to talk about that in a minute, because that's a different type. That would be a different type of personality. So but to answer your question, I do think that in the big giant scheme of things, it kind of works out that way.
Yeah.
Because again, by just being a good person, in terms of being a giver that has no expectation, that does come around back to you.
Yeah.
And here's some positive results on this slide. People who are givers have increased profits for their organization. They're more innovative. They come up with better ideas. They have better productivity. Their quality is better. They're efficient in teams. Companies that have a lot of givers have a higher customer satisfaction rating and a lower employee turnover rate. So as someone who's a giver, if you're working for a company that has higher customer satisfaction, what does that usually mean to you? Let's say you're in sales and you're a giver, or let's say whatever, you're a giver and you have higher customer satisfaction. How will that come back around to you in the end? What are some ways? What's a possible way?
Your customers will return to you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, loyalty
Definitely.
And word of mouth.
and word of mouth. Good point.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Definitely going to increase your sales, all right, and that's the person that you know is going to help you, and you don't want nobody else, you know.
And that's money in your pocket, right?
Yes,
because you're making either you're making a commission, or maybe you're getting a raise or a promotion because your customers are happy. Same thing with lower employee turnover rates. I think we all know very well that higher employee turnover rates make more work for the people left behind. So if you're a good person, if you're a giver and you're fostering a good work environment, that may contribute to people staying that might have been on the fence, and that makes everybody's workload a little bit easier usually. So yeah, it is kind of a one hand washes the other in that sense.
I think it also certainly boosts company morale. And I think
Oh
that's
my God, yeah.
really important factor.
I think it also cuts down on a lot of stress. Oh my goodness, you have no idea how many people who are so stressed out, and I'll say 50% of it comes from the people you work with. They don't even want to go to work because they're so unhappy. You know,
Yes.
right? Especially when you're working with takers, you're always watching your back. You got to watch what you say. You got to watch what you do, because you got to always be looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Absolutely.
couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. It makes for a very uncomfortable workplace.
It does. It does. So when you work with people who are givers, or when you're a giver, again, it just makes people get along better. It's everybody's more productive in the end. And you usually, as long as you don't burn yourself out, and we'll look at some of the things that could happen. You do have to be mindful of things, as we said before, from the low performance and the high performance givers. So takers are kind of on the other end of the spectrum. So how many of us know a taker? How many people have worked with a taker or know a taker from their life?
I do.
Anybody want to elaborate without incriminating anybody? Does anybody have an example or a story about somebody maybe that they considered a taker?
Well, our
let's
kids,
talk
I think.
about, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I think our kids, specifically the younger one, they take her.
The
They
kids,
need help, need support, many things.
Yeah.
Without any reward.
Mm-hmm.
Just kiss.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Kids are takers, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have
And the student in the school, I think they are takers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked with people before that are takers, that it just is clear that they are out for themselves. So I know he talked in the video about it, and it struck me about when you do a group project, but the one person keeps talking about it like, I did this and I did that, when really they didn't do the whole thing. And I know my daughter went through that in group projects in college, and she got to the point where she got really aggravated by it, and at one point had to put an end to it, because some people are doing a lot of the work and somebody else is taking all of the credit. In the beginning, you're like, okay, that's fine. I don't mind that I'm not in the spotlight. But when it becomes that person then is really making it look like you're not doing your part when really you are, that doesn't go well. Then nobody wants to work with that person anymore. They don't want to collaborate with somebody that's going to be that way. So that's probably the best. I mean, I could give you examples in my personal life, but I'm talking about professionally.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. You don't want to work with those people.
Right.
Now, Maria, I have, when you ask that question, two examples, one very strong examples, one in my personal life and one in my work life. And the pattern that I see is that their perceptions are completely the opposite. Their perceptions about themselves are completely the opposite. They really think they are fully giving people. They have just a very warped perception of who they are and how they present.
They're not aware, or they're not self-aware.
Not aware. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've all run across people that are, you can tell. I have examples from people I know in previous jobs as well. And usually they are people who just don't ever, they just take. They treat other people below them poorly. They're always kind of kissing up to the people above them, trying to make themselves look better. And they're more concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
So
they have a tendency to be manipulative.
Yes.
They are always trying to, as you said, make themselves look good from somebody else's work. Always, you know what I'm saying? They're always sneaking around to see how they can take credit for somebody else's work to make themselves look good. I'm like, but in the end, you didn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they are selective about information, either not sharing information or sharing sound bites of information that
Yeah,
to
yeah.
you know to elevate themselves.
I have a friend. I asked her about something, very simple thing. So she promised me many times about a ingredient of something, a food, some kind of food. So every time she promised me to send me the recipe, but every time she didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because she want to keep this because very delicious thing she want to make. So my kids like what he did. So, but
So she didn't want to share that with you. She wanted to keep
no,
it all for
no,
herself.
no, at all. Many
Yeah.
times I asked, but no, didn't. She didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's a good example. Okay, so we're going to listen to a short clip. This is actually Adam Grant, and he's talking about how to spot a faker.
So how do you catch a taker before it's too late? We're actually pretty bad at figuring out who's a taker, especially on first impressions. And there's a personality trait that throws us off. It's called agreeableness, one of the major dimensions of personality across cultures. Agreeable people are warm and friendly, they're nice, they're polite. You find a lot of them in Canada, where there was actually a national contest to come up with a new Canadian slogan and fill in the blank as Canadian as, and I thought the winning entry was going to be as Canadian as maple syrup or ice hockey. But no, Canadians voted for their new national slogan to be, I kid you not, as Canadian as possible under the circumstances. Now, for those of you who are highly agreeable or maybe slightly Canadian, you get this right away. How could I ever say I'm any one thing when I'm constantly adapting to try to please other people? Disagreeable people do less of it. They're more critical, skeptical, challenging, and far more likely than their peers to go to law school. That's not a joke, that's actually an empirical fact. So I always assumed that agreeable people were givers and disagreeable people were takers. But then I gathered the data and I was stunned to find no correlation between those traits. Because it turns out that agreeableness, disagreeableness is your outer veneer. How pleasant is it to interact with you? Whereas giving and taking are more of your inner motives. What are your values? What are your intentions toward others? If you really want to judge people accurately, you have to get to the moment that every consultant in the room is waiting for and draw a 2x2. The agreeable givers are easy to spot. They say yes to everything. The disagreeable takers are also recognized quickly, although you might call them by a slightly different name. We forget about the other two combinations. There are disagreeable givers in our organizations. They're people who are gruff and tough on the surface, but underneath have others' best interests at heart. Or as an engineer put it, oh, disagreeable givers, like somebody with a bad user interface, but a great operating system. If that helps you. Disagreeable givers are the most undervalued people in our organizations because they're the ones who give the critical feedback that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to hear. We need to do a much better job valuing these people as opposed to writing them off early and saying, kind of prickly, must be a selfish taker. The other combination we forget about is the deadly one, the agreeable taker, also known as the faker. This is the person who's nice to your face and then will stab you right in the back. And my favorite way to catch these people in the interview process is to ask the question, can you give me the names of 4 people whose careers you have fundamentally improved? And the takers will give you 4 names, and they will all be more influential than them. Because takers are great at kissing up and then kicking down. Givers are more likely to name people who are below them in a hierarchy, who don't have as much power, who can do them no good. And let's face it, you all know you can learn a lot about character by watching how someone treats their restaurant server or their Uber driver.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you catch a taker before it's too late? So how do you catch a taker before it's too late? We're actually pretty bad.
So he gave some good examples of, things. And I like that little drawing that he did where he talks about the different kinds of takers and givers. And I think we've all come across that. He talks about the disagreeable giver. And I don't know if any of you have read the book, A Man Called Ove. I don't know if you ever have a chance. It's a very good book. And he's definitely the main character is a disagreeable giver. A very curmudgeonly man who, in the end, is a very good-hearted person. So we definitely see those. And the fakers, we kind of had, I think, Robin, you mentioned before that you had dealings with people who were more of a faker, an agreeable taker. So,
yeah. Well, what's so present for me is they're agreeable and they're fake, and you can see the different ways they behave according to who they're speaking to.
mhm.
So if they're speaking to someone in a superior position, they're so friendly and light and respectful. And if they're in a lower, more junior level, they're condescending and they're just plain fake, phony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's sometimes from the outside you can see that, right? When you're looking at somebody from the outside, you could see it more than.
Well, and when you have others bear witness to the same phenomenon, it's not you yourself just kind of misjudging or maybe being too hard on this person. But when others are observing a similar behavior in that individual, it kind
absolutely.
of validates it.
So how do we deal with these people at work? So here's a few tips on how to deal with takers. The first one, all right. So first thing you can do is to screen for them. So you're aware, right? So Robin, you said you saw some tendencies. If you're in a position where you can screen people out so you don't have to deal with them, then that's great. If you can't, just be aware. The second thing is to give takers feedback, because sometimes see you later, Robin. Sometimes when you deal with people and you tell them, listen, this is how you're behaving, sometimes it helps them to hold a mirror to themselves, and you give them an opportunity to change their behavior and maybe become more of a giver or a matcher. The third thing is, if you're going to deal with people that are takers, then you need to kind of morph yourself into maybe not so much as a giver, but maybe more of a matcher, where you are asking for something in return. This way they're not taking advantage of you as much. The fourth thing is to set boundaries. Make sure that they understand that it's not okay to mistreat you or to take advantage of you. So when you see that happening, you need to say, I'm not comfortable with that, or that's something I'm unwilling to do, or whatever it might be, but you need to deal with them by setting boundaries. And the last thing is to harness their strengths. So as they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Maybe you figure out a way that if they're bringing something to the table, make sure that you're able to use whatever it is that they're bringing and get some advantage out of it, so that you're not the one being taken advantage of. Okay, and the last thing we're going to talk about real quick is matchers. So matchers are people who basically fall in the middle. They can go either way. They usually, they'll help you, but they expect at some point in the future you're going to do something for them. Likewise, if they, on the other side of the coin, if you do them a favor, if they ask you for a favor, their ethic is that they are going to plan to reciprocate. So, I have a very good friend who's just like this. She's the kind of person who, some people, they won't let you do them a favor. They always have to reciprocate because they never want to
owe you anything
on the receiving end. They never want to feel in debt. Yeah, exactly, Joyce, owing you. They never want to feel indebted to you. So that's a matcher. That's somebody who, and sometimes it's just nice to do a favor back for someone. I'm not saying it's not, but sometimes it's nice to let that person bask in the good feeling of just doing you a favor or doing something nice for you, and not having to
feel like you owe them.
Yeah, exactly. So those are kind of what matchers are. Matchers are, they're also a good person to have in the workplace. They're not a bad person to have in the workplace. They have a strong ethic. they consider work more of a business transaction. Basically, it's a deal. You said before, Joyce, one hand washes the other. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just based on the data that Adam Grant has developed. They're not usually the most successful as you might think they are. They can be successful, but at the end of the day, it's the givers that we talked about before, those traits that are the ones that end up being the most successful. So if you were a matcher in a workplace setting, how would you adjust your behavior when interacting with a giver? Would you adjust your behavior in any way? So in other words, if you wanted to, how would a matcher act toward a giver? I guess, and I guess
a matcher would always feel like they had to do something in return. They would never feel comfortable with just being helped or just receiving something. They would always feel like they had to do something back for that person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
wouldn't it, like you said, how would you deal with it if you had those two type of people? It's like, just come to an understanding. Look, you don't have to do anything. I did it from my heart.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. Sometimes I feel like I've done that to people. Or I've ruined their good thing they did for me. Like people. You're trying to. Sometimes you do that with the best of intentions, but you can. So I guess the answer is, if you're working with a taker, then sometimes as a matcher, it's a good thing to be a person who looks for that reciprocity, looks for somebody to reciprocate, because they need to be managed. Those people need to be managed. And with somebody that's a giver, maybe you just learn to say thank you sometimes.
Yeah, that's what comes to my mind, just to really thank them.
Yeah.
And take it, because that's what the giver really values, that they're able to give.
Right. And then pay it forward somewhere, even if it's not with this person, but pay it forward when you can. All right. So just a little bit of just as a summary. So givers are people that help with no expectation. They're good listeners and respond to the ask within reasonable bounds. And they assist others often with little 5-minute favors that are just quick hits that make people feel good. Takers often look to others to help them complete their tasks. They'll ask others to do their activities even when it's not assigned to them. And they're generally just people that don't reciprocate when other people give to them. And matchers usually view the workplace as kind of a mix of give and take. They'll help, but expect a return at some point. And when given help, they believe that they should return the favor. So based on what you learned today, does anybody want to volunteer what they think they are? Are they a giver, a taker, or a matcher?
I think everybody in this group is a giver.
All givers, definitely.
And I think because of that, you're right. It comes back to us because it's great when you are with other people that are also that way, because if you're a giver, I don't mean to speak for everyone, but that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I would do anything for you. I don't expect you to do anything back, but I bask in the feeling that I know you also are looking at it that way. So that's why it's, we're good coworkers. So I've already decided for everyone.
Very generous of you, Lisa. Always giving. See, that's why you're a giver.
No, but you are too.
But you know what? I want y'all to take this with you. And as I said before, guys, it makes getting up in the morning and coming to work with people like you guys the best. I lie to you not, I mean, I don't have, I go home. I feel that our work group is very fortunate because we have something a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're always there for each other, even if it's a personal thing or a business thing, but that you have someone who is there for you, who can lend you an ear or help you out if you need it.
It's very difficult to deal with a taker. And the final thing I'll say is I think we can all be some combination of these categories too from time to time. I think once we start sort of pigeonholing us, because I think I also enjoy being a matcher as well. You know, when somebody does something for me, I look for the opportunity to give back. And I'm sure that I've been a taker too.
Yeah. And that I was going to say the same thing. I feel that, you know, I strive to be a giver, but I know that I'm not always, you know, we're always, you know, at different times in our life or at different points of our day or our week or whatever might be happening, we can have traits of the different.
The taker traits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Those are taker traits.
sometimes you do. And it's,
I get frustrated, and Lisa has to come in here and get me off the cliff.
so yeah, I think there's definitely a little bit of overlap, but we can all strive to be, you know, givers for our own benefit and for the benefit of everybody around us.
Yeah.
All right. So anybody have anything else they want to say before we sign off here?
Nope, this was great.
This was
Very
great.
nice.
I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today, and we'll see each other next time. Have a good
All
evening.
right.
All right,
All right,
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye.